Hi. In section 12 of Counsels and Maxims, Schopenhauer advises us on how to deal with misfortunes that have already passed. It's just 2 paragraphs long. Here's the first one. In the case of a misfortune which has already happened and therefore cannot be altered, you should not allow yourself to think that it might have been otherwise, still less that it might have been avoided by such and such means, for reflections of this kind will only add to your distress and make it intolerable, so that you will become a tormentor of yourself. And here he cites a long Greek word that I'm not going to try to pronounce. No doubt it means self-deprecator or self-tormentor. It is better to follow the example of King David, who, as long as his son lay on the bed of sickness, assailed Jehovah with unceasing supplications and entreaties for his recovery, but when he was dead, snapped his fingers and thought no more of it. If you are not light-hearted enough for that, you can take refuge in fatalism and have the great truth revealed to you that everything which happens is the result of necessity and therefore inevitable. So Schopenhauer is telling us here, obviously, this sounds like actually like very good dad advice, right? The kind of advice your father might give you. If it's in the past, it's a misfortune, it can't be changed. Don't waste your time thinking about alternate worlds where it's not the case. Don't beat yourself up for what you might have done to avoid it. Like King David, if you're strong enough, like King David, try to change things for as long as you can. Once the misfortune is set in stone, accept it and move on. If you're not strong enough, the fallback position is to think of determinism and necessity. Take comfort in the fact that things could not have been other than the way that they are, and you've already moved past a bit of the regret and beating yourself up over it to the position where you can begin to think about how to accept it and move forward. Here's the second paragraph. However good this advice might be, it is one-sided and partial. In relieving and quieting us for the moment, it is no doubt effective enough. But when our misfortunes have resulted, as is usually the case, from our own carelessness or folly, or at any rate partly by our own fault, it is a good thing to consider how they might have been avoided, and to consider it often, in spite of its being a tender subject, a salutary form of self-discipline which will make us wiser and better men in the future. If we have made obvious mistakes, we should not try, as we generally do, to gloss them over or to find something to excuse or extenuate them. We should admit to ourselves that we have committed faults and open our eyes wide to all their enormity, in order that we may firmly resolve to avoid them in time to come. To be sure, that means a great deal of self-inflicted pain in the shape of discontent, but it should be remembered that to spare the rod is to spoil the child. And here he quotes a Greek proverb from Menander that I've not been able to translate, but doubtless means the same thing. So that's the end of section 12. What is he telling us in this second paragraph? As good as it is to be able to be indifferent to misfortunes that you can't change and to ignore the alternate paths that you might beat yourself up for not having taken, if there is an error of yours that has contributed to the misfortune, it is worthwhile to cause yourself fairly significant psychological pain, dwelling upon your contribution to it in order to impress upon yourself all the more deeply the need not to make that mistake again in the future. It seems to me good advice, and again, it's kind of Schopenhauer in full dad mode here, giving advice to people who might govern their minds poorly. So we use this kind of self-discipline to impress upon ourselves our own contribution to our misfortune so that we might avoid making such contributions in the future. This reminds me in a slight way of Simone Weil's observation in her essay on school studies, that we ought to contemplate our own wretchedness and impress upon ourselves our own inadequacy when we go over, say, a school exercise and realize that we've done it poorly. Weil has in mind a kind of spiritual benefit that I don't think Schopenhauer is thinking of, but I just thought I'd mention the connection. So that's it for section 12. We'll look at section 13 in the next video. Thanks for watching today. Goodbye.